All right, this is David Waters with Gators Breakdown of SEC Breakdown. You know what? This is a different one than what we thought after we was looking at that first half against Florida and Tennessee. But with plenty to talk about in this week's show, we'll look back at the Florida-Tennessee game. Florida's looking at their new athletic director, and we'll look ahead to Vandy. And, of course, joining me this week, as always, Joey V. You can find Joey on Twitter at Joey underscore Sports Talk, Sports Radio, 1560 down in Melbourne, Florida. So Joey, a little more solemn than we want to be talking about this game, but Gators has got to move forward.
Yeah, it's yesterday was a tough day. Woke up, feeling a little bit nauseous, and but Florida deserved to lose. Second half just atrocious. Very very similar to in my opinion, to how the Florida State game went last year with the defense. Defense for the first 2.5 quarters was just ridiculously good, and then they quit. I think a lot of that is because the offense just couldn't stay on the field for more than a minute and a half at a time. But also, I don't know what was going on. There were guys left open. I know Tabor did slip and fall on one of the touchdowns, but that one to Hurd on the wheel route was just a killer. I don't know. That was a missed assignment on Duke Dawson. Had a rough game, man. Rough game. Oh man, he had a terrible. That was the worst game I've ever seen him play. He got burnt on several one-on-one matchups. And I think his playing time is going to be limited because of it. Very, 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 very conservative play call. Actually, I was messaging you during the game when we were talking about it. Very, very conservative play calling. I think that what Jim McElwain did in the second half and Doug Nussmeier did in the second half was just, it's unspeakable. I mean, you go for the throat. You got to go for the kill. You got deep balls working, and you go to run, and then you're stuck in a 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13, and you're stuck in a passing situation where they're going to put 6 defensive backs on the field, and they're expecting a pass. The most predictable offense I've ever seen, I think, from Jim McElwain and Doug Nussmeier in the second half. It basically was a true game of tale of two halves. I mean, Florida and Tennessee couldn't have looked more different from half to half as each team did. All the credit in the world to Bob Shoop for locking up Florida's offense in the second half. The adjustments that Tennessee made were really good, and maybe Butch Jones has flipped the script this year. Maybe he is a second half team now. Maybe he's not the collapsible team in the fourth quarter anymore. But Tennessee's got a couple tough games ahead. They got Georgia and Alabama and Texas A&M all coming up. So we'll really get to see what they're made of in the next 3 weeks. But Florida's got to start rooting against Tennessee every week now because they're behind the 8 ball. Florida needs Tennessee to drop 2 games now, and it's tough to think that Florida doesn't control its own destiny anymore. When the Gators controlled their own destiny the entire season last year in the SEC. Florida pretty much was the decisive factor in the SEC East last year, and this year they need help. And, if they don't get to Atlanta, it's their own fault. And it's just a very somber day in Gator Nation, I just also want to I also want to say my condolences to the Fernandez family. Jose Fernandez passed away yesterday, and tonight D. Gordon hit a home run in the bottom of the first inning, and the whole place went nuts, and he was crying, and all the Marlins were crying. They're all wearing number 16 Fernandez jerseys tonight. So I just wanted to say my condolences to his family, and losing him yesterday was really sad. I'm a Braves fan, and the Braves were supposed to play the Marlins yesterday. Game got canceled, obviously, but that stuff is more important than any Gators football game or, anything like that, So we just wanted to say that, and prayers out to Arnold Palmer's family as well for, losing him last night as well. But back to Gators, Tennessee, I was just astounded at how well Appleby played in the first half, and then he disappeared in the second half because of play calling. That was my biggest takeaway, I think. position to a position. And geez, what a bonehead Callaway was, huh? Not once, not twice, but 3 times. You go to field, punts in your 5-yard line. I mean, he's just, I don't know what was going through his head. But the Florida defense got a lesson in humility on Saturday afternoon, and they deserve it. They deserve every bit of it. All the I told you last week on Tuesday, I said, if Florida doesn't win, their players deserve to get roasted because they've been talking all off season, and they deserve it. The players deserve to get roasted on Twitter, on Facebook, through sound bites. They deserve it. So it was just very heartbreaking to see that Florida had the game in hand for 2.5 quarters and just gave it away. They gave it away.
Yeah, I find it very interesting. You mentioned this, the style change of play calling, after halftime. I really think, up 21-3 and Florida, knowing in what they have in defense, I really think Jim McElwain and I guess Doug Nussmeier really thought that if Florida defense plays its game, 21 points more than likely should be enough. With the way the game was playing, but you also saw Tennessee had some chances in the first half. There were some drop balls. There were plays there to be made from Tennessee, and Florida caught the positive end of those by Tennessee receiver dropping the ball. So I think if the coaches would have probably sat there and thought about it, there were some plays being made by Tennessee that were there, and you shouldn't have been so conservative. Of course, hindsight's what it is. It's very hard to know that was going to happen. And you know what? Florida was running the ball pretty well in the first half. I'm pretty sure the coaches thought they could probably come out and run all over this Tennessee defense and milk the clock a little bit. But that wasn't the case. I don't think you completely abandoned your game plan that got you there. And that's exactly what they did. Yes, you were running the ball well, but you know what? One more kill shot down the field and one more touchdown, might have been enough if you do it early enough in the third quarter. It maybe, puts even more doubt in their mind. But, and plus, let's not forget, Jalen Tabor, the very first drive, had an interception on Dobbs and the offense, 3 and out. After that, 5 more 3 and outs, 6 straight 3 and outs in that third quarter. So, yeah, that's just what you can't have when you're playing on the road against. And, I even said last week, too, there was going to be a time when this Tennessee offense would click. I didn't necessarily know if it would be this game or not. And it was kind of weird that it kind of happened in game. It's very hard. You don't find too many times where the lines of scrimmage change through the game. And it happened at halftime with this. So, I'm sure the coaches are kicking themselves for things. They should have opened up the offense a little bit more for Appleby, especially the way he was playing in the third quarter. You basically cooled him off by what was going on. So, you mentioned Callaway, and Jim McElwain said in his press conference, he's supposed to put his heels on the 8-yard line and not go backwards. Well, he did it 3 times. Florida got away with the first one when Callaway fumbled on the goal line. The defense made a great stand. But time and time again, there's mistakes like that are going to come back and bite you. So, Florida is behind the 8 ball, like you said, Joey. I guess, what they could hope for is, if the teams have one loss, is some type of 3-way tie. But, Georgia's probably not winning out even if they beat Tennessee somehow this week. Florida would have to turn around and beat Georgia but that would give, give Georgia 2 SEC losses. So there's not really much room. There's not your 3-way tie there is pretty much non-existent now. So, yeah, you're right. Tennessee's going to have to lose 2 games. You got A&M and Alabama coming up as probably their 2 more likely scenarios there. You're right. Florida's destiny is now not in their hands. But if you go out and you take care of business, Florida's probably a favorite going into every game from here on out. Up in SEC games probably until they go to Arkansas. The Georgia games may be in question a little bit as who might would be the favorites there in Jacksonville, according to what Georgia does coming up in these next couple of weeks. But Florida's looking good for what they have coming up. But this, of course, we haven't seen this offense be consistent. So we have to see this offense be consistent enough for them to feel comfortable in taking that role.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. These next 3 games are going to be, until the bye week, are going to be determining factors in Florida's season. I tweeted it on either Saturday night or Sunday morning. I said that this coming week against Vanderbilt is going to kind of be a stepping stone into where the program's going. Does Florida squeak out a win against a bad Vanderbilt team that's given them trouble in the past and kind of sneak into October limping? Or does Florida take care of business against a team that's far inferior and win by 3 or 4 touchdowns and kind of get angry and kind of take out what happened against Tennessee on Vanderbilt? So if the former happens, then Florida's in trouble and they could drop 3 games this year easily. I think if Florida goes out and beats the brakes off of Vanderbilt and kind of reasserts themselves and gets the confidence back, LSU coming to town for an early noon kick. LSU right now is who knows what they're going to be going forward. No one knows what the confidence is. Florida that game now looks a little more winnable for Florida than it did 3 weeks ago. And then you got Missouri coming into town for homecoming. Missouri looks like they're starting to click. That could be a little, dangerous trap game. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks, but depending on how Florida looks to me against Vanderbilt this Saturday, I think is going to be their launching point for how the rest of their season is. If you remember in 2008, we're not comparing this team to the great 2008 team, but after Florida lost to Ole Miss in late September, ironically, been a big upset. Florida kind of turned the pages like as quick as possible and destroyed almost every team they played from that point on. So if this team can get off the mat and actually play up to its talent, I really think that, this team is headed for, 10 wins again, in my opinion. But it's going to take a lot of humility, a lot of mental resolve, some coaching changes, maybe some coaching philosophy changes. Maybe we want to start putting people away, and stepping on throats. And it's just, it'll actually be interesting to see when Luke Del Rio comes back. If Appleby goes out and plays just as well as he did on Saturday against Vanderbilt, then maybe you don't rush him back. But if he comes out and has a stinker and Florida has to win on defense on Saturday, then maybe you bring Del Rio back as soon as possible and try to get him back for the LSU game. But he was dressed, and I believe that he was the backup quarterback. I think if Appleby ended up going down against Tennessee, I think that Del Rio would have came in and played. I think McElwain wants to do everything he can to keep the red shirts on Trask and Franks, and I don't think he wants to burn either of them. So he's going to do everything he can, and I think that's exactly why Del Rio dressed kind of as an emergency quarterback. And I think that Del Rio could be available this week. We don't know, but I'm guessing Appleby's going to start. And then probably get Del Rio back at home for the LSU game. But I want to see what the defense looks like. They're the ones that got demoralized in the second half. They're the ones that got their lunch taken from them and beat down and their lunch money stolen. I want to see how they come out and respond. I want to see how the defensive backs respond against a bad Vanderbilt offense. Let's just be honest. Vanderbilt's offense is terrible. Their defense is pretty good, but their offense is very bad. And there's no reason that Florida should give up, in my opinion, more than a touchdown against Vanderbilt. Very overmatched. But, what's Florida going to do? 11 a.m. Central kickoff time, a little early in the morning. Not what Florida's used to the first couple of weeks of the season. But this team has to get off the mat. And I think that this game is going to be a kind of a turning point game. Like I said, are they going to squeak by and kind of just coast to, 8 or 9 wins this year? Or are they going to bounce back and be the team that we thought they were 2 weeks ago, and after they beat Kentucky and, win double-digit games again this year? Because, the season's not over, obviously. It's one game in the SEC. Tennessee drops 2 games. Florida takes care of business the rest of the SEC way, that you don't even have to beat Florida State. You're back in Atlanta. I want to see what this team does in the month of October. Very winnable games. We don't say that very often about October games at the University of Florida. Very winnable games this year. They are. It's weird. It's really weird that Florida probably will be favored in every game in October, barring something drastic happening next week or the week after. But I can honestly see Florida being favored in every game in October. And I can't remember the last time that's happened. It's been several years, many years. So, this team has the balls in their court right now. It is. I mean, you have to take care of business. You're basically, your backs are against the wall. Tennessee looks like they're coming together, which is bad news for Florida. But, you got Tennessee has some tough games coming up, and I'm not even writing Georgia off at home. I mean, you're at home. The crowd's going to be amped up. Tennessee coming off a big win. Are they going to be too hyper, and too hyped up and maybe have a letdown? This is kind of a trap game for Tennessee. I mean, it is. And so, we got to be huge Georgia fans this weekend. And, I'm just really looking forward to seeing what this team's going to do going forward. And I really, one thing I just want to emphasize to Coach McElwain, and I know he'll never hear this, but geez, man, pick a running back. I mean, pick a running back, Mac. I mean, you got to pick one. Mark Thompson's on social media complaining about his 6 carries. Well, if you're complaining about your 6 carries, dude, run the ball better, because you're twice the size of everyone around you and you can't get through defensive tackles. I mean, Cronkite played pretty well. P. Ryan kind of had his moments, and Scarlett, played really well too. I think that McElwain has to choose one of the running backs, and I think you got to go with Scarlett. I think he's your best pure running back that you have. I think he's just really tough to bring down, and he's very mobile. He moves side to side really well, and he moves north to south. But I think that's hurting the running game. I really think it is. I think it's starting now that your trial run is over and you've played some bad teams and you're starting to get better competition. You need to have some continuity at the running back position. And I really would like to see 1 or 2 running backs get 75% of the carries, throughout the game. And I can't emphasize that enough. And how about letting Tyree Cleveland play a little bit more? How about that nice catch he had on the sideline? I mean, that was pretty awesome. Why don't we start playing him a little bit more, and let him develop? He wasn't the number 2 wide receiver in the country this past year for no reason. I mean, let him get some, I don't care if he's in the doghouse or not. You got nothing to lose. You got to try out everything you got. And, I really, really want to see Callaway just make some better decisions. Oh my God. Special teams player of the week, 3 times last year? And he does the bonehead mistakes that he had I don't know what was going on, but just this week was just a mind-boggling. It was just, in the first half, nobody was more excited, and in the second half, nobody was more deflated. And it just, this game was just insane.
Yeah, and with Callaway, we were mostly speaking to his special teams, but he had a great first half. Had a big first catch on Florida's first drive. But with the stats in the first half, Callaway became the 3rd fastest wide receiver to reach 1,000 yards in UF history. That's 17 games for him. So behind Carlos Alvarez and Jabbar Gaffney, that tied Riedel Anthony. So
pretty good company.
Oh yeah, pretty good company. So. Florida, of course, we mentioned had it going in the first half, of course. And Joey, you hit on it, about Luke Del Rio, and I was going to actually ask you about the running backs, about the 4-headed monster that they did, and of course, like I said, Scarlett was averaging over almost 6 yards a carry in the first half, and I think I agree with what we've seen from him through the first 4 games. I think he has been the most consistent running back. We were looking for something like that to take out of this Tennessee game, hopefully in a winning scenario, but it didn't happen. But I think one thing that did show on offense is that I completely agree. Scarlett should be your number 1 running back moving forward. And the play calling, though, I mean, it's so stark difference. I mean, first half we were, it was hark back to Jim McElwain's Alabama days, and especially that screen pass. Roll the pocket one way and you got a screen wide open on the other side. I mean, that was a thing of beauty, and nothing we saw like that in the second half. No shots downfield in the second half. You mentioned Tyree Cleveland's big catch. It was nice to see a new face, another new face this season get in and with a big time catch. But all for naught when the team drops it in the second half. So Joey, I mean, one quick thought is see if you can just quickly wrap this up before we go on with Florida's next AD. Any inkling of thought if Appleby plays pretty well again this week? Any inkling of a quarterback controversy in Gainesville?
No, I don't see it yet. It could become one maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. But I think as of right now, especially, I mean, if Florida had won that game on Saturday and Appleby had continued to play well throughout the second half and make plays, and then maybe he busted out and had another 300-yard game against Vanderbilt, then maybe there might be some whispers. I mean, I even tweeted out in the beginning of the game and after the first quarter, is it too soon to say that Appleby has played better through, against Tennessee than Del Rio has all season? And he did for most of the game, actually. I mean, he did. He looked better. His passes were crisp. He was dropping dimes down the chimney on multiple plays. We've seen Del Rio miss a couple times on those big plays. I think I see Del Rio as a safer player. He's safer. He might not win you a game, but he's not going to lose you the game either. And I think Appleby's the kind of guy that could win you a game, but he could also lose you a game or two or three or four. And that's what scares me, and that's what scares me about Appleby. And as of right now, there's definitely not a quarterback controversy unless, I mean, he goes out against Vanderbilt and just, drops dimes again and they, Florida puts up 50 on him. Maybe then there's some whispers and then you start him against LSU and kind of maybe slow Del Rio back into the mix, but you're not so hasty to get him back. And then if he plays really well against LSU and their secondary and how good their secondary is, then you kind of gotta think, but I'm not there yet. I won't say it yet at all. But hats off to Appleby though, stepping in. I mean, he did a really good job. He didn't get no help from the rest of his team. He didn't. So, and shame on Greg Nord. I mean, the tight ends just disappeared in that game on Saturday. Goolsby played pretty well. He had some good blocks, but Ciante Lewis, I mean, come on, man. I mean, I watched him a couple times. He ran the wrong route. He turned around and looked. Nobody even knew where he was. I mean, it's just he had a huge drop. That was on a third down. For a first down.
Yep.
For a first down, and that would have kept the drive going. And then Tennessee came back and scored on their possession when Florida kicked to them. So, I mean, So you can't make mistakes in a hostile environment when you're that wide open. And I mean, I'm very, very disappointed with the tight ends and how they were used and the drops and just, I mean, it's just very, very unfortunate with many, many things in the Florida's offense. We thought the offense was going to look a lot better this year, and it has for the most part. But we've seen also moments of the same old. We did against UMass. We did against Tennessee. So.
Yeah, I think when the competition has stepped up, they were on fire against Kentucky. Ready to play an SEC opponent, and you saw what they could do. The first half against Tennessee, you saw what they could do, and like I said, they really just got too relaxed, too content on having a big lead. I think we'll see more of that offense. It's there. At least we know it's there after seeing a game and a half of it. But you're right. And just to speak to that, the first half, 300 total yards. Scarlett with 6 attempts, 37 yards, 6.2 yards a carry. Callaway had 4 receptions for 134 yards. But it was the 6 3-and-outs after halftime that did Florida in. 16 plays, lost 9 yards with an interception. This is Gators Breakdown on SEC Breakdown. You can find us on Twitter at SEC Breakdown and download our podcast, SEC Breakdown Podcast. It's Gators Breakdown Podcast. With myself, Mark Rogers, Chad Neepling, Mike Laval, Joey with me here on Gators Breakdown every week, breaking down the Gators. But Joey also got some big news. Florida going to announce brand new AD on Tuesday. Scott Strickland from Mississippi State will be announced as Florida's new AD after Jeremy Foley is going to retire, effective October 1st. So with Strickland, he takes over. He took over for Greg Byrne at Mississippi State. He's a Mississippi State grad. He worked at Auburn, Tulane, before he came Kentucky a little bit before he came back to Starkville. And now since he's been in Starkville, he's kind of led a new campaign of getting athletic facilities on their campus upgraded, which is a big deal at Florida. They're either being upgraded or upgraded now at Mississippi State. Expanded the stadium a little bit, did some renovations to their softball, tennis complexes there. We've seen the rise in Mississippi State football, mostly due to Dan Mullen and Dak Prescott, but it's still under his watch. He seems to be the all-sport AD, much like Jeremy Foley. And it's kind of funny, Joey. We know we're in the Twitter sphere, the Gator Twitter sphere, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about Jeremy Foley, about how he's let Florida facilities fall behind, which is true, and how he maybe, wants to be the all-sport AD more than concentrating on football, your big-time breadbasket money winner. Joe, you see this as a good hire for Florida's AD, and do you think he comes in and kind of follows Foley's mold as more of the all-sports AD, or does he put more of an emphasis on football with facility upgrades, spending coaching money, recruiting money, going out there? Definitely the facilities, is the big thing for most Florida fans that you and I know.
I think Foley's not retiring until July. So I think that, Strickland's going to come in and kind of be under his wing for, 8 months, kind of just learning the ropes. Strickland's a younger guy. He's not young, but he's younger. He has had success at Mississippi State. He's, like I sent to you earlier, he's a fundraiser. And that's what Florida's looking for right now. Florida needs $100 million for all their renovations and their new football complex that they want to build. And Strickland is known as a fundraiser. That's what he is. That's what he does. So, and that's what he's going to do. And he is more of I think he's more of a all sports kind of guy too. Mississippi State, he went out and hired Ben Holland last year for the basketball program. He's kind of known for putting money in multiple areas, but he also into basketball and football. He knows those are your two money makers. So, I really am interested to see how him and Mike White work together. Mike White's an Ole Miss guy. So that'll be kind of funny to see. He's a Mississippi State grad and Mike White's an Ole Miss grad. So that'll be funny. Mike White may need to win now, or else he might be looking for a job next year. But no, I like the hire a lot. I've read about Strickland. He won Athletic Director of the Year last year, which is pretty darn good. So I think Florida was looking for, I don't want to say a carbon copy of Jeremy Foley, but someone similar, someone that's going to come in and is going to kind of to focus on fundraising and upgrading the facilities that haven't been upgraded in 20 years. But also kind of keep the other sports relevant. Florida's talent for their athletic department runs so deep, and their recruiting runs so deep for every sport that Florida has the luxury of being able to go and spend money on other sports, because the other sports provide the revenue back more so than other schools around the country. Florida's softball team makes more money than Iowa State's softball team. That's why Florida can invest more money in their softball team than Iowa State can. Florida's track and field team makes more money than Nebraska's track and field team. So Florida can invest more. So you're getting a return on your investment. So I really do want to see him come in and kind of stick with the all sports, but I also want him to be able to get the money that Florida needs to upgrade their facilities and be an SEC school, and not just an SEC school, but a powerhouse with the recruiting facility, with the new weight room. Have you ever been in the press room at the University of Florida? It's connected to the weight room. You have to go through the weight room to get to the press room. And come on, man. You need to have a press room that's set up all by itself to where, you have your press conferences and all that stuff. So Florida is behind the times for being such a huge research university. Florida makes a lot of money off of academics, off of grants and research grants. And also Florida has the patent on Gatorade, of course, so they still make money on that. So Florida has money coming in, and it's astonishing to see how little the development of the football facilities has been, since before Jim McElwain was hired. And it's ironic that Will Muschamp started recruiting negatively against Florida's facilities when he went to Auburn, because he wasn't even a good enough coach to demand facility upgrades. Jim McElwain comes in, never coached, head coached a game in the SEC ever before, just a coordinator, and he demands the facility upgrade, and they happen like that. So, it's ironic, but I like the hire. I knew about him before. We kind of went into a little more detail, but I do know that he's a fundraiser, and he did win Under Armour Athletic Director of the Year, which is a pretty prestigious award.
Right, and some people said that this hire took a little bit longer than it should have. There were rumors going around that Jeremy Foley may be looking over this person's shoulders, so that shied away some of the higher candidates. Pat Dooley come out and said Strickland was one of the top candidates Florida wanted in this. So of course you're going to hear both sides of the story here. I would have to think Strickland probably was pretty high on the list. If you look at his resume, it had to be everything Florida was looking for. So I don't think Florida had to go too far down on its list to get the guy that they wanted. But speaking of, he comes from the SEC, and Florida continues its SEC, schedule is coming up this week. They've traveled to Vanderbilt, as Joey alluded to earlier. That's going to a 12 noon game at 11 Central Time. So Florida fans will have to get up early for this one and see what goes on there. But, Kyle Shermer leads Vanderbilt. He's, for the year, 58 of 105, 614 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Vandy scoring 23 points per game, while Florida's only allowing 13 points per game. But, of course, we have to see this Florida defense bounce back from the disappointment that was, in Knoxville. So, Joey, do you see this, this noon start time being a bugaboo for Florida? Do they not really come out firing all cylinders, or do they, like they should, come out and play pretty mad from last week and put it on the Commodores?
Well, at this point, David, I'm not going to speculate how Florida's going to look, because we expected many different things on Saturday. But no, I was being sarcastic. I think Florida's going to get off the mat, and I think that they're angry. I think that they're embarrassed right now with all the talking they've done in the offseason, and basically they've had to go home with their pants down crying. And I really think that this team is mature enough and it has enough upperclassmen to kind of rally the troops on defense and get off the mat. I think Florida is going to come out and dominate this game. I never want to see the white helmets ever again at the University of Florida. I know you love them, but get that damn thing off your shelf, man. I mean, that thing has been nothing but a nightmare. Vanderbilt should have beat us last year in the white helmets, and I still have PTSD from the 2009 SEC championship game that I wasted my money on to go to and see Florida get absolutely stomped by the University of Alabama and have Greg McElroy look like Joe Montana against Florida's defense in a Charlie Strong defense. So, I hate the white helmets. I always have. When they brought him back, I was just disgusted. I love the orange uniforms. I just hate the white helmets. There's something about them that drives me nuts. And for some reason, I don't care if you're a superstitious person or not, but Florida never seems to get up for games that they wear the white helmets. So, but all that aside, I think Florida gets together this weekend, and I think they get off the mat. And I think Florida absolutely dominates this game on Saturday. And I got the Gators winning 45-13.
I see similar. I really do think this team comes out, pretty mad. And you heard from Jim McElwain's press conferences and some of the players that talked on Monday. There were some, tears shed in the locker room, which there should have been. And even the players, Wilson, Tabor, they admitted that they were humbled. At least they could come out and say it and not really continue to talk trash, which they really can't. So don't get me wrong there. This team, I think, will come out mad. Will come out firing. That could have some negative effect, but I doubt it. I think all the focus will be on what they should be there. Going back to the white helmets right quick, Joey, first thing. Remember when they first brought them out, it was a good thing. They had the special uniforms against Florida State the week before, that Alabama game that you mentioned, and pounded Florida State that week. But you're right. Since then, the white helmets have not been too good of a good luck charm, if you believe in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was just giving you a hard time.
Dude,
I know how much you love the white helmets.
I love the conversation. But it is a thing. But you're right. Florida does play bad at them, so maybe there is something there. But I'm not that I'm not that superstitious type of person there. So, but yeah, what I really want to see, Joe, and you mentioned against Vanderbilt, I think this really has to be the game. You really have to decide on your running backs. You saw what happened against Tennessee. You saw Jordan Scarlett take over in the first half. This is where you probably need to establish your game plan for the rest of the season. This is an overmatched opponent. You are better than, and like you mentioned, it's time to start playing like you are better than these teams. When you know you're better and the nation knows you're better, it's time to start showing up and showing it. We're tired of these close games, against opponents that are overmatched. Whether you're working on stuff or not, you know what? I hate to say it, but in a way, it probably led to Luke Del Rio getting hurt. If that game was a blowout like it should have been late in the third quarter, Luke Del Rio shouldn't even been in the game when he got injured. Florida's taking care of business, and hopefully they come out mad. Hopefully, they come out peed off like they should. Against Vanderbilt and show that and show that. But like you said, it starts on defense too to get there. You don't create swag with trash talk. You create swag with your play. And after the Tennessee game, you have to hit the reset button and start a new swag with your play. So with that Florida defense, I don't care what we saw. It's not that bad. They got caught, with a red hot Tennessee team in the second half, an offense that gave them, six straight 3-and-outs where they had to be on the field a lot. A lot of offenses are going to take advantage of that. So we don't want to overreact. The Florida defense is, yes, some adjustments probably can be made once they watch the film and stuff, but then they're nowhere near as bad as they showed against Tennessee. So Florida needs to march to Nashville and take care of business, like you said.
This is a game where Florida, it's right up their alley for this point in time. They need a game like this. They need to play a team that is kind of down, because this is a feel-good win for Florida. I think, to be honest, I would be scared if I'm a Vanderbilt fan. I think Vanderbilt's in trouble. I think they're going to catch Florida at the wrong time. I think if Florida had beaten Tennessee, the emotional high might have been a letdown for Florida and Vanderbilt on Saturday. But I think Florida was humbled on Saturday night, and I think that Vanderbilt is in trouble. And I can see Florida just absolutely annihilating Vanderbilt in every phase of the game on Saturday. I hope I'm right, and I hope I'm not wrong. Because if we see another bad performance from the offense or from the defense again on Saturday, there's going to be some changes that might need to be made soon, coordinator changes. And I really, really hope it doesn't come to that. But I do think with all my heart that Vanderbilt is in trouble, and I think Florida is going to absolutely destroy them on Saturday. And I think that you'll see Jim McElwain coach mad on Saturday, and I don't think he'll let up. I think if Florida gets up by 3 touchdowns, he's going to still throw the ball down the field because he's going to say, look at me, I could still do it. I'm not the schmuck that you all thought I was 6 days ago. I just worry about the early start. Maybe Florida takes a quarter or two to kind of get going, but I think at the end, Florida dominates this game. Like I said, I think Florida wins 45-13, and I think Florida needs this game. I think this is a game where they need to get their confidence back. I think their confidence is shot right now, and they need to get their confidence back because if Florida wins a big game against Vanderbilt, they come home with a little swagger back. Against LSU, the other DBU. LSU's reeling right now with their loss of Les Miles, and LSU's going to need a good signature win, feel-good win. So I think Florida needs to watch out, and we'll preview that game obviously next week. But I think Vanderbilt's in trouble.
Joey, and a quick thought about that. You mentioned LSU, and of course they're a yearly Florida opponent. Was it a little bit surprising to you they went ahead and fired Les Miles? And what was your thought about Les Miles, just quickly before we wrap this show up?
It'll be sad to not see him in the SEC anymore. He's been such a part of this conference. I mean, it feels like Nick Saban getting fired. He's just been such a staple of this conference for so long that it feels like a piece of the SEC is left. But I understand why LSU did it. And there were some reports saying that the reason they fired him early in the season is because they thought he might rip off a couple big wins at the end of the year and make them reconsider and make the fans want to keep him again. And then they'll be stuck with another mediocre off-season type, going into next year, with questions. So I think that secretly, obviously LSU, AD, Joe Oliva, and the boosters wanted to win this game Saturday, but I think they kind of got an out. They got a free pass to fire him because of that loss on Saturday night. I think that was their kind of way of kind of high-fiving each other and saying, okay, good. Now we can do it. Now we can do it with no, backlash. But I understand why they did it. LSU was spinning tires in a mud. I mean, they just became stagnant offensively. You got the best running back in the nation, and he can't do nothing. I know he's been playing hurt. You got wide receivers that tower over everybody in the SEC, and they can't do anything. You can't develop a quarterback. You can't even get a good quarterback at your university. Florida stole Felipe Franks right from under LSU's nose. LSU hasn't had a good quarterback since Jamarcus Russell. I mean, you want to say Zach Mettenberger was good? Yeah, he was all right, but he was a transfer. He wasn't an LSU recruit. So LSU hasn't recruited a good quarterback since Jamarcus Russell. So it's just, I think it was just time. And if I'm in the SEC West and Tom Herman gets hired at LSU at the end of this offseason, I'm shaking in my boots if I'm Nick Saban, because Tom Herman is going to turn that program around. I'm telling you. All these LSU fans are saying Jimbo Fisher. Now, I would want Tom Herman over Jimbo Fisher because Tom Herman is a better recruiter than Jimbo Fisher. He hasn't even had the resources, and he's still getting 5 stars and 4 stars at Houston. What is he, 14-1 as a head coach? Something like that. I mean, it's crazy, 15-1, something like that. But yeah, so I think if LSU goes out and hires Tom Herman, which I think they very well could, they're going to basically back the Brinks truck up to his front door and, give him whatever he wants. So I think that is a very realistic hire for LSU. Oh, yeah, not Lane Kiffin. Not Lane Kiffin. I mean, people saying Lane Kiffin right now are just ridiculous. Nobody's going to give Lane Kiffin a job in the SEC anytime soon. I mean, he burned a lot of bridges. Trust me, Greg Sankey is not going to allow any SEC president to hire Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, it was. That was a. I did a little quick update for SEC breakdown. That was the wild card I threw out there because I knew a lot of people were going to bring Lane Kiffin's name up for that job. But you're right. You mentioned LSU spinning their tires. If you think about it, it was basically the same situation Georgia was doing with Mark Richt. Les Miles had a ring, national championship ring from years ago. That was the only difference in that from 2007. So yeah, you're right. Mark Richt would lose an early season game to get Georgia fans all mad, and somehow end up winning games to end up saving the season over and over and over again. So that's exactly what was going on at LSU. They saw it. They did something about it. So, yeah, we're going to miss the, open finger clap from Les Miles and the eating of the grass a little bit. But you know what? For Florida fans, they should probably be happy because no matter what, he found a way, trick plays and, late big plays that did Florida in.
Ed Orgeron scares me now. Orgeron scares me, okay? He's a good coach, and I can't believe that he has not been given a second chance at even a smaller school. What he did with USC when he took over for Lane Kiffin, and they were 6-1 under him. He makes me nervous coming into Gainesville. I'm sorry, he does. He has some sort of thing about him where he just motivates guys to run through brick walls for him, and you hear him speak, he sounds like a caveman, But he makes me nervous as a temporary coach, and I just want to say that. And Les Miles said today that he wants to coach still. He's not done coaching. So and I think whoever hires him, especially at a smaller Power 5 school, that's going to be a home run hire because he's going to be able to recruit at a smaller school. It may be a Big Ten school or a Pac-12, something smaller that's not going to have the expectations that LSU has, and I think he's going to dominate the whatever team that he goes to.
The outlier there, I'm saying watch out for. If he wants to stay in the SEC and it continues, watch out for Kentucky and Les Miles.
Yeah, that could be a thing if Mark Stoops doesn't turn it around. But yep. I think David Shaw, somebody in the SEC wants to hire David Shaw, whether it's Auburn or Kentucky possibly. Would you consider Stanford for Kentucky? Would that be a bad move?
Yeah, for what he's doing there. But
not Auburn. I think that'd be a home run hire for Auburn if they brought David Shaw onto the Plains.
And say Houston, Houston finds a way to keep Herman. Jimbo Fisher stays at FSU. David Shaw, their third option for LSU.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want
somebody to open it up?
Yeah, you
right.
think so? I think Herman though is their number one guy. I think the offense alone just appeals to the LSU people. LSU's kind of in the same situation Florida was when they got rid of Muschamp. They want an offensive mind that's going to come in and bring some innovation and points, scored. And I think LSU's thirsting for that. I think Jimbo Fisher turned down FSU or LSU last year, and that's why I think partly why they decided to keep Les Miles. I think they did reach out to them, yes, and he said no. Because if he would have said yes, I think Les Miles would have gotten fired after that Texas A&M win, no matter what.
Yeah. I know people want to know. That's exactly what happened.
So I don't even think Jimbo Fisher's on their list. I don't even think they're going to give him a call because I think since he already turned them down, I think they know that Tom Herman's I think they're going to put all their chips in his basket. But they're saying, though, if Tom Herman does get the Big 12 bid for Houston, that he gets a $5 million bonus cash just for that happening. And then his pay will be able to increase because they're some with the pay wages, the Big 12 will be more than what it is now. So, he could want to kind of stay in the Big 12 and build something, so if that's the case, man, where does LSU turn? Do they turn to David Shaw? Do they bring Bobby Petrino back into the SEC? Does Greg Sankey allow Bobby Petrino to come back in the SEC, even if he's not allowing Lane Kiffin? Where do you turn? I mean, it's kind of, LSU, there's a chance LSU could get stuck with their pants down at the end of the year, if the chips don't fall right.
That's right. And we'll definitely talk more about LSU next week. And that's also been announced as a noon game, surprised some people, but noon game on ESPN there. But, it kind of had to get stuck there. SEC Network, it's too big of a game for SEC Network. ESPN is going to get more eyeballs no matter what time of day that game is. So they weren't going to stick it on SEC Network that night. I think Georgia, South Carolina was named that night. But, it does speak to a little bit. Florida losing to Tennessee, LSU already having 2 losses, fired their head coach, where you didn't really necessarily see that game be a night game. But like I said, we'll talk more about that next week. This is Gators Breakdown, part of the SEC Breakdown Network. He's Joey V. I'm David Waters. You can find us on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Joey at Joey_Sports Talk. Joey, man, thanks for having us. We did it again. Another good show. This has been Gators Breakdown.
Thanks, David.